ever wondered how many people can't afford a place to live? According to Pew Research, nearly one-third of American households were cost-burdened in 2023. This includes 27.1% of homeowners with a mortgage and nearly half 49.7% of renters. That means millions of people are struggling to make ends meet because of housing costs. But what does it really mean for housing to be deemed affordable? Affordable housing is defined as spending no more than 30% of your gross income on costs like rent, mortgage payments, or utilities. As this graph shows, what's considered affordable depends on where you live. Area Median Income, or AMI, is a key measure used by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to determine who qualifies for housing assistance. It represents the midpoint of incomes in a region and adjusts for family size to ensure resources go to those who need them most. In this video, we'll explore how other countries address affordable housing, Wall Street's influence on housing costs, the history of wages and housing prices, former President Trump's approach to housing affordability, and solutions to make housing accessible for all.
The federal minimum wage was introduced in 1938 as part of the Fair Labor Standards Act. And what is its purpose? Minimum wage was created to ensure workers earned enough to afford basic necessities. But over the decades, this promise has eroded. Adjusted for inflation, today's federal minimum wage was $7.25 an hour, which was set in July of 2009 and is worth less than it was in the 1980s. At this rate, someone working full-time would earn just $1,160 a month before taxes, far below $1,713 average rent for a one-bedroom apartment. Want to buy a home? Forget it. With housing prices soaring, saving for a down payment on minimum wage is nearly impossible. Instead of building wealth, minimum wage earners face a cycle of debt and insecurity, with little opportunity to improve their financial standing.
Outbidding local families by offering cash. Once they acquire these homes, companies like BlackRock convert them into rental properties and increase rents, driving up housing costs across entire neighborhoods. By dominating the market, they restrict supply, inflate prices, and make home ownership a traditional path to wealth building out of reach for working families.
The impact of Wall Street's housing dominance goes beyond affordability. Renting instead of owning prevents families from building equity, passing wealth to the next generation, or escaping cycles of poverty. For communities of color, discriminatory lending practices and targeted disinvestment have compounded these issues, deepening systemic inequalities that stretch back decades. This is seen with the difference in homeownership between races. As seen, white people outweigh any other race for homeownership. But there's another way. In Sweden, housing is treated as a public good. Rent controls and government-subsidized public housing ensure that everyone has access to stable, affordable homes, unlike in the U.S., where housing is a commodity. Sweden views housing as a fundamental right, one that protects families from being priced out of their communities.
To address wealth inequality and the housing crisis, we must rethink our systems. Raising the minimum wage is just the beginning. We also need policies that hold Wall Street accountable and restrict corporations like BlackRock from turning houses into a profit-first business. Housing shouldn't be a privilege, it should be a right for all. For low-income families, housing is often their biggest expense, consuming a significant portion of their income. This leaves little for necessities like food, healthcare, or education. Oftentimes, these low-income families are minorities living in densely populated areas, often unable to achieve upward social mobility.
Wealthy investors often view affordable housing through an economic lens. While concerns about zoning changes and potential tax increases exist, many recognize the economic benefits of stability in housing markets. Investors who support affordable housing initiatives see the potential for long-term economic growth and community development. For policymakers, the challenge lies in crafting solutions that balance community needs with economic feasibility. Recent proposals focus on encouraging private investment through deregulation and tax incentives. These strategies aim to expand affordable housing options while minimizing financial strain on taxpayers. Affording housing isn't just a social issue, it's an investment in stability, opportunity, and the future of our communities. Understanding these perspectives can help us work together toward meaningful solutions.
Recent surveys reveal a significant shift in public opinion on housing policies, with growing support for solutions aimed at tackling the housing crisis. According to a 2023 Pew Trust poll, a majority of Americans favor YIMBY, or Yes in My Backyard policies. These policies advocate for increasing housing availability, particularly in urban areas. We found that 7 in 10 Americans support building more apartments to address housing shortages. About half favor reforming local permitting processes to enable the construction of more housing. 6 and 10 support policies that allow people to live closer to jobs, schools, and other places of interest, an important step toward creating more connected, livable communities. Additionally, at least 6 and 10 back social reforms aimed at improving housing for all, with 82% supporting measures to reduce building fees, address homelessness, and making housing more affordable. This growing support for pro-housing policies contrasts with earlier attitudes. For instance, a 2021 Pew Research study found that COVID-19 pandemic made city living less desirable, with many lower income and minority groups disproportionately affected. Suburbs, and by extension urbanism and NIMBY, not in my backyard, policies have become more appealing during that time.
However, the tide appears to be turning. The renewed interest in urban living and housing reforms reflects a broader understanding that cities can become more inclusive and affordable with the right policies in place. At the same time, challenges persist. For example, programs like the Low Income Housing Tax Credit, LIHTC, fund nearly half of federally supported affordable housing. But many LIHTC properties built in the 1990s are now losing their affordability status after reaching their 30-year limit. While states like California has the Preservation Notice Law, AB 1521, requiring property owners to notify tenants before affordability restrictions expire, and New York has housing preservation programs providing financial incentives to extend affordability in expiring LIHTC properties. Much of the country faces uncertainty, with families unaware of when their housing might become unaffordable. Imagine a future where homes are built in just days, at a fraction of the cost and placed almost anywhere, from vacant urban lots to underutilized spaces beneath highways. This isn't just science fiction, it's a solution within reach today. Tiny homes and 3D printed homes are revolutionizing the housing landscape by addressing affordability and accessibility in bold, innovative ways. Cities like Austin, Texas, and Portland, Oregon are leading the charge, piloting programs that embrace these technologies. Studies show that 3D printed homes not only cut construction costs by up to 40%, but also significantly reduce building time, making affordable housing a reality faster than ever before. These homes also provide an opportunity for our families priced out of traditional housing to achieve home ownership, building wealth and stability. The flexibility of 3D printed homes allows them to build in diverse settings, from rural areas to unused urban lots, helping to increase the housing supply across the nation. But these solutions face challenges. Many regions still have restrictive zoning laws and building codes that limit adoption, and there's the social stigma often associated with low-income housing, which can hinder broader acceptance of these communities. Overcoming these challenges will require investment in 3D printing technology and materials, adjustments to zoning laws and permitting processes, and grants or subsidies to incentivize developers and builders to embrace these solutions. Another crucial step is making homes more energy efficient. Programs like the Department of Energy's Weatherization Assistance Program have already shown us what's possible. Retrofitting homes to be energy efficient can cut utility costs for low-income families by 20 to 30%, putting hundreds of dollars back in their pockets annually. The benefits extend beyond saving money. Energy-efficient homes help reduce energy consumption, supporting sustainability goals while allowing families to redirect saving toward education, healthcare, or even future homeownership. However, high upfront costs for retrofitting or building energy-efficient homes remain a significant barrier. To overcome this, we need government funding for energy efficiency programs, partnerships with utility companies to offer incentives, and training programs to scale up retrofitting services for contractors.
Having explored immediate solutions, let's now focus on medium and long-term fixes that address the root causes of the housing crisis. At the heart of this crisis is restrictive zoning, which limits the ability to build affordable housing. Reforming these zoning laws can increase the housing supply and make affordable options more accessible for all. One critical step is to allow higher density housing in areas currently limited to single-family homes. As metropolitan and suburban areas grow, zoning laws often block the development of apartment buildings, townhouses, or mixed-use developments that could accommodate this growth. By reforming zoning to permit higher density housing, we can increase the number of available units, easing competition and helping to bring rent prices down.
But local reforms alone won't be enough. To drive change, federal legislation can incentivize cities to adopt these zoning reforms. For example, tied funding linking federal grants like the Community development block grants to zoning changes could motivate localities to eliminate exclusionary zoning and allow for more inclusive multifamily developments. National housing standards could also set a framework to promote consistent policies across the country. These standards would encourage localities to allow for multifamily units, accessory dwelling units, and mixed-use developments in neighborhoods previously zoned only for single-family homes. This ensures equitable development in both urban and rural areas. To further support these reforms, we must provide tax incentives for developers. Building affordable housing in areas with restrictive zoning can be financially challenging, but tax credits could make these projects viable, encouraging developers to invest in communities previously resistant to such development. Additionally, federal infrastructure funding could support cities that pass zoning reforms by improving transportation utilities and road systems, ensuring that these neighborhoods are well equipped to handle new growth. We can also expand housing vouchers to support low-income families and accessing these newly developed affordable units. By linking vouchers to areas with inclusive zoning laws, we ensure that low-income families have access to high-opportunity neighborhoods with better schools, jobs, and amenities.
Successful zoning reforms require close collaboration between all levels of government. Pilot programs can help test innovative zoning practices such as upzoning or inclusionary zoning in select cities. These programs will provide valuable data to guide nationwide reform. Local governments will also need technical assistance to implement these reforms effectively. Federal programs can provide tools, model ordinances, and expertise to help cities adjust their zoning laws without unnecessary legal barriers. Moreover, regional housing solutions will allow metropolitan areas to address housing shortages collectively. By coordinating development across cities, we can streamline resources and ensure equitable growth.
Federal oversight is essential to ensure that zoning reforms align with the Fair Housing Act, which prohibits discrimination and promotes equal housing opportunities. Local zoning laws that perpetuate racial or economic segregation should be reviewed and amended, ensuring that all families, regardless of background, have access to affordable housing. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, can also prioritize funding for cities that commit to zoning reforms, providing further incentives to expand affordable housing stock. Once these reforms are in place, it's crucial to monitor and evaluate their effectiveness. Data collection will allow policymakers to track the impact of zoning changes on housing affordability and availability. Feedback from local governments and community members will help adjust policies as needed, ensuring these reforms continue to meet their goals. These reforms may take time, but by remaining flexible and responsive to real-world outcomes, we can create a housing system that works for everyone. Addressing the housing crisis requires a comprehensive
The housing crisis is a complex challenge, but it's not impossible to overcome. From innovative solutions like 3D printed homes to critical zoning reforms, every step forward brings us closer to making housing accessible and affordable for all. As we've seen, the problem isn't just about supply, it's about equity, opportunity, and prioritizing people over profits. Housing is a right, not a privilege. Now is the time to act. Whether it's supporting policies that hold corporations accountable, embracing forward-thinking housing technologies, or reimagining zoning laws, we each have a role to play. Together, we can build a future where everyone has a place to call home.